Lovely. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm so grateful to be here. So I'm going to start off by saying that I'm going to take you on a dark journey of childhood sexual abuse and share how I share how my past did not define my future, and that my path to healing was long and hard, but I'm here to tell the story. So if you live in Australia and you are triggered at any way by my story, then please go and ring Lifeline on 13 11 14. And for those of you that are overseas, please go and talk to or ring your local online counselling service. So I just wanted to clarify that at the beginning because it is quite a dark story. So life can be unfair for so many of us, and for whatever reason. And I just want to know if you've ever felt hopeless or different, or afraid and lonely all at the same time. And what if I told you that there was always a light at the end of the tunnel, no matter the circumstances, and no matter the trauma, and no matter the type of abuse? I will later share with you how I managed to find my way through that dark tunnel. According to Bravehearts, during 2018, there were over 26,000 victims of sexual assault reported to police here in Australia. And according to a 2019 Australian Bureau of Statistics report, a combined total of those, 45%, was between 10 and 19 years old. So to me, that is quite a staggering statistic, and really one that really needs to be addressed by the community and by our governments. So now I would like to share with you my story, and it's the story how I was a statistic as well. So as I stared out my window in my bedroom and tried to think of a time when I was happy, and nothing immediately came to my mind. And my thoughts travelled back through my memories, and even back to my early childhood, and I just couldn't pull anything out from my memories. But I must have been happy at some point because, children are always happy. And at this point, staring out the window, I was 16, but geez, I felt so old. I really did feel really old, and life hadn't been kind, and I just couldn't find anything happy that came to mind at that particular moment. And my first memories of being in pain were about when I was about 18 months old, and I received a beating from my father. And I recall that I was used to sleep in the bedroom, same bedroom as my parents, and I used to suck my thumb, and my father didn't like it, obviously. So he spanked me and he shook me, what to me seemed like forever. And, you might find this extraordinary that I can remember that, and how old I was, but I've got memories back to, when I was 1. So that's how traumatic my life was. Now, I recall him telling my mother very angrily at that point that in the morning she was supposed to cover up my thumbs so that I couldn't suck them anymore. And of course, my mother, being the dutiful wife that she was, got some tape out and strapped my thumbs. But I obviously got better because I secretly sucked my thumb until I was 10. And I used to hide under the covers, so because Dad used to come and check on us. But then the nose-eating monster came. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but I was actually hearing my heartbeat in my ears. And the nose biter, he had like really pointy ears, like a fox, and it had a pig nose. And if I didn't hide my face under the covers, he'd come and bite my nose off. Now, it was quite scary because he used to have this black top hat as well, and a black cape, and I can still actually picture him today, which is, it's quite a profound picture for a young child to be on. And my father was never a happy man, and I can never remember him, actually being not happy or not angry at us. And he was always picking and doing stuff. And so the story now goes to we're in 1969, and man has landed on the moon. And I had won a night out at the local radio station because there was a competition, and I was going to go and meet my favourite DJ because I just thought he was really, really handsome. And 1969 just went by so quickly, and it was back to school, and it meant new friends and new grade and a new teacher, and all too soon it would be Halloween and Thanksgiving and my 10th birthday and Christmas, and all things that you know, a child at that age, 10 years old, should have been looking forward to. And, you know, I wasn't. My father came home earlier than expected because he used to work away a lot, and because of the snow had come early, he'd be spending a lot longer at home that winter than that we all would have liked, because we just didn't like spending a lot of time with him, because he didn't play with us and he didn't do anything with us really. He was just a narcissist but you know, now I've figured that out. So during that winter, he and I used to play a game, and I found it really fun. He and I used to snuggle under a blanket in the lounge room and on a Sunday night, and you know, watch the telly, and he would kiss me, and he would, you know, stick his tongue in my mouth and touch me in places that, you know, made me feel beautiful, and I didn't understand those feelings, but I didn't want him to stop. But then he decided that this ritual would go and move into his bedroom. So I didn't think that was all right, because I didn't want to be caught by mum. So, you know, I thought that was a great idea. And now it's 1971, and it was Sunday morning, and I had to go to my parents' room and crawl into bed with Dad while Mum was cooking the breakfast. And as I said in the beginning, the Sunday ritual was fun, and I felt loved by my father, and I felt special, and I felt, I felt just that he really was, mm, loving me the way a father should love his daughter. But now in 1971, after 2 years of this ritual, I just, all I felt now was anxiety. But no one ever said no to my father, because we'd end up with a backhander, but the worst treatment of all was his silent treatment, because he wouldn't speak to you for days on end, and it was really horrible, and you knew that you were in trouble. So I just did as I was told, as per usual. So, being the dutiful daughter that I was, I just put up with the ritual every Sunday morning. But I do remember him telling me that, all dads love their daughters like he loved me. And of course, it had to be true, because, he was my father, and he had said it. So, and I was sworn to secrecy until I was 16. So I'm really, I didn't want to tell anybody, because, I was too afraid to be into trouble. But soon I really got tired of the game, and I really got tired of him, because it was just boring, and I wanted to spend more time with boys my own age, and I wanted to let them do to me what my father was doing. And I used to tell them what my father did. So they couldn't really believe it, and they thought I was lying. But, I was nearly 12, and I thought, well, why not? They can do to me what he does, and why should it make any difference? So in 1972, Dad decided to take us on a holiday to Germany to meet his family. And, of course, we were all really excited, and, we thought we'd have so much fun, but it really didn't end up to be much of a fun holiday, because we only went to like sightseeing in one city, and most of the time we were either sitting on a train or walking around finding places, because and carrying these really heavy suitcases, because Dad wouldn't catch a taxi. He wouldn't do anything that cost money. So my view on money, obviously, from my childhood, wasn't a very good view of at all. So that didn't help all the trauma things that were happening to me at the time. So, and you can imagine, having to tote all these suitcases and be on trains all the time, and because it was in East Germany, it was quite difficult to get across the border either way, because you had to go through the Brandenburg gates at the time, and because Dad had escaped from the east to the west just after the war. He was frightened that he'd get picked up and thrown in jail. So he made us afraid of that as well. And what also wasn't fun in the holiday were the nights, because mum and myself and my brother and dad all slept usually in one big, huge feather bed. And and I always had to sleep next to dad. And quite often I would ask mum if we could swap places, but it just never happened, because he was always touching me, and I just didn't like it anymore, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. But a 6-week holiday finally came to an end, and we went back home to Canada. And but I didn't have any friends when I got back, and I found that really distressing. And I was quite lonely, because every time I went to their house, I was never allowed in. I was never invited anywhere. And if I did, go to their house, they'd just say, well, they were too busy or they couldn't come out. So obviously, me telling the boys, the word had got around. So, and then they told their parents. And so I wasn't a good girl to be hanging out with, even though, it was nothing I could do about what was going on. So, and then Dad decides that we're going to move to Australia. Well, that was in September in 1972. So obviously we had 2 stops before we got to Sydney, and one was in Fiji, and I could keep away from him pretty well there, because there was nowhere private for us to, be alone. But in Hawaii, not so much, because Mum was doing, the washing and whatever, and so I had to put up with sessions of loving and all that sort of stuff in Hawaii, because we were there for a few days. And Dad was always emotionally, physically, and psychologically abusive towards me my whole life. So, you know, I didn't grow up in the best of circumstances. And a lot of times I used to go to school with, a black eye or a bruised butt. And, back in the 70s, it was never talked about in the Western countries, because, what happened at home stayed at home, and, teachers didn't want to get involved. And not like it is today, where they have to actually report abuse. So um, it was, quite a difficult thing. And I lost my virginity to my father finally in Australia in 1972. We were living in a caravan, or a camper van, whatever it is that you prefer, in one of the states that we were living. And yeah, that was one of the worst times of my life. And one night after I'd attended a school dance, Dad had picked me up. And I sat in the back seat, because I thought I'd be safe there, and I pretended to fall asleep. But he stopped the car somewhere along the road and opened the back door to the car, and he pulled down my panties and he raped me. And I was, that was the most humiliating thing I think that he'd ever done to me, because I could hear voices in the background, so I don't even know where it was that he'd pulled up. So, and then, through that and after that, I was just angry all the time. I was angry at him. I was angry at my mother. I was angry at life. And I was just angry at the world. But I didn't know that my anger, I just thought I had a bad temper. I didn't really know I was angry. I it didn't correlate to me. And the fact that I didn't actually pick that up until I was 59, when my mother got ill, that I actually went and, I forgave her finally. But you'll find out why I forgave her. The anger from my mother started because from the age of 6, I've been her mother. She wasn't ever my mother. So that it was always difficult. So, 6, who wants to be someone's mother at the age of 6? Certainly not any child I know. And finally, I told her at 13 what had been going on. And I was brave enough to tell her, and she didn't do anything really. Dad had an industrial accident, and it looked like she was going to die, like he was going to die, sorry. And her and I went to the police station. Don't ask me why we went when Dad was like going to die, but I went and reported the abuse, and they took my statement, and all stuff was, going hunky-dory. And then Dad started to recover, and she made me go and recant the statement, so you can imagine what was going through my brain. And, I think that's when the thorn of anger really started to really dig deep inside of me. And that's where my anger just started to fester and fester and fester. And then we moved to another little town, and Mum used to get out of her marital bed and sleep in my bed, and I'd have to get into their bed every Saturday night without fail. So you can imagine my Saturday nights. I hated them. I hated them with a passion. And I was never allowed to talk to boys. I was never allowed to go out. If I talked to a boy, I'd get bashed up, and mm, it was it was terrible. And I finally decided that I'd had enough. So I ran away when I was 14. But I didn't realize that I was leaving the fat, and I was actually going to go into the fire. It was not a good relationship. That the man, he was older than me. Although he wasn't sexually abusive, he was still emotionally and psychologically abusive. And some of the things that he used to make me believe were, really, I believed them for a very long time. It took me a long time to get over them. And finally, I was arrested as being a minor in danger and spent some time in a remand centre. And, while I was in remand, my mother actually slept with the man who I thought was my rescuer. So, just another sort of thing that my mother had subjected me to. And so in 1974, I had to go to court, and that was a whole new kettle of fish as a traumatised teen. And I had no idea what the court process was and everything, but thankfully the jury believed me, and my father actually was sentenced to 5 years in prison. So that was, a little bit of a bonus, but it didn't make my anger issues any better. And I received no counselling at all for throughout any of this, because my mother didn't think I needed any. So, I just found it really hard to cope. I drifted from like relationship to relationship. Some were one night stands, some were not. I was still enduring emotional abuse. I tried to commit suicide several times. I used to cut myself quite a lot. So, and I never found like the love and nurturing and things that I didn't get from my parents. So, so the anger, you just used to build up and build up and build up. And I used to try and bury it down a lot, but it just sometimes just got so much, and it would just come spewing out like a lava from a volcano. And I just, I'd throw things, and I'd just yell and scream, and but I didn't know why. And in 1987, Dad died suddenly, and I went to his funeral. But as they were, wheeling his coffin behind the curtain, I cried. I screamed in anguish, because I could never get the answer to my question. Why? Why had he done this to me? Why? Just why? And I would never know. I would never know. Could never get that answer. And of course, my mother would never tell me, because she didn't know, and she didn't apologise for a very long time. So after that, I just used to float around in this bubble of loathing, self-loathing, and blame everybody. I was just so angry at the world. And I finally, in my early 50s, I went to a psychiatrist and got diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome, bipolar, and emotional dysfunction disorder. Thank God for those diagnoses, because it actually put me on a road to recovery. I found out why I was so angry and why I did the things that I did. And these diagnoses all stemmed from the years of abuse and trauma that I had endured. And it also brought about, unfortunately, a chronic pain condition called fibromyalgia. And I've been suffering from that for nigh on 30 years now. And so that hasn't been an easy road to travel either. It's quite a challenging condition. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So with my mental health issues and and my chronic pain condition, I finally just, I don't know, I just finally realized that there's much more to life, and there just has to be something more. And I'm so glad that there is. And there are some people who will be watching this video later on who have a story to tell. And I'm sorry that if they've been through some sort of trauma, that, you know, they've had to experience that. But there are, you know, people who haven't told their story, and they should. They should tell their story, because it's good for them. And, you know, I know for me, the journey has been long and difficult, and I'm still working through some of my limiting beliefs, and I still have not learned to love myself, you know, fully as I should. I still constantly criticize and put myself down. But when, as a child, you are constantly criticized and put down, and when you're constantly told that you're no good, and, you know, you need to be more feminine, and you're too fat, and you're too loud, and you're not perfect because coming in second is never good enough, you know, it changes how you perceive yourself long term. And those are long lasting things that, you know, it's hard to get over. And there is actually scientific proof to say that that programming is done in the first 7 years of your life. And so if the programming is negative in those years, that affects the way that you subconsciously think about yourself as you're an adult. So being told how I was told, and, you know, treated as I was treated, it's, you know, it's no wonder that I had the beliefs, and still have some of those today. But I just wanted to share with you how I've managed to turn my life around, because it hasn't been easy, but I have learned to flip that script around and turn negative thinking into positive words. And living a life of gratitude has been a help to me. And, you know, being grateful for just the small things like a flower, or, you know, a butterfly, or a bee, or not a fly, because I don't like flies, but, but, you know, and I'm still a people pleaser. But I use it to benefit others. I don't use it to benefit myself. I'm an advocate for against domestic and family violence. Um, so I'm a co-founder of an awareness initiative that's here in Adelaide, Australia, and I strive not to use certain words in my vocabulary, which are quite difficult. But the words are should, but, can't, hate, try, and don't. Don't ask me why. They're just words that I try not to use, but I sometimes slip up. I've also found following my spiritual path has been helpful. I don't believe in God, but I do believe that there's a higher being somewhere. But yeah, that's just me. I think if there was a God, then he wouldn't let things happen to children. I like to do things that make me happy, because they light up my soul. And for those that are listening and have travelled down the road of sexual abuse, I'm sorry for you know, your sad journey. And just know there are others like us, and you have a story to tell. Please go and tell it. You need to tell your story. And today I want to share with you 3 ways on how I overcame my anger and feelings of worthlessness. And there are more, but, you know, for now, 3 are enough. I want to remind you that sexual abuse is not the survivor's fault, it's the perpetrator's fault. And I always used to blame in my subconscious that it was my fault, but it never is. So you need to remind yourself that it is never, 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 never your fault, and get that thought right out of your head. Holding in your anger can be such a damage to your body and to your mind. So, you know, get rid of it. Seeking help, you shouldn't be afraid to tell your story. I've been to psychologists and psychiatrists and the like, but they didn't help me. I helped myself. I couldn't find the help I was seeking, because I didn't think that they were anything. They didn't have the education, or they didn't have the the experience, or they hadn't lived through the experience, so they just didn't know how to help anyone or to help me. It's not to say that they won't help you, of course, because you know, but you need to get in early. I used to numb my pain with alcohol, but I'm now 3 years sober. So that was, you know, alcohol doesn't solve anything. I found that. I used to drink every single night, but now I don't. I don't even drink at all. If you have a family member who has experienced sexual abuse, get them to a counsellor straight away, because that's the only way they're going to heal. It's too hard on your own. It really is. And surround yourself with positive people, because I know that if I had not surrounded myself with positive people who have lit up my life, I don't think I'd be where I am today. And they've shown me that I am a wonderful person, and that I am worthy of love, and I have a big heart, and I have a soul worthy of love. So I'd just like to say in closing that abused children are really a lot stronger than they think they are. In fact, they become profilers of human emotion. They can read faces very well. That's because they need to know when they're safe. And child sexual abuse does not have to be a life sentence. It can, after you've healed yourself, be an awakening to who you are, and you can heal from it. It's great. And remember that life happens for you. It doesn't happen to you. And you know, you can grow from your experiences, and life is good.